He would have
song.
the rights, at least half of the rights to the publishing of the song. I said, I can't do that. This song's already been a hit with me, and this is in my publishing company, and obviously this is going to be one of my most important copyrights, and I can't give you half the publishing.
Dolly Parton. The name itself brings a smile to your face, doesn't it? She's an icon of kindness, a global treasure who's been America's sweetheart for over 60 years. Dolly is a symbol of grace, charity, and talent that's off the charts. Songs are the soundtrack to our lives, and her personality is a beacon of light in a cynical world. But let's be honest, the title of this video is Top 7 Singers Dolly Parton Hated Most. Does Dolly Parton, the woman who seems to love everyone, even have it in her to hate? Well, behind that sweet smile and those sparkling rhinestone jackets is a history of professional battles and intense rivalries that she kept under wraps for decades. What happens when the Queen of Country, a woman who built an empire on love, clashes with some of the biggest names in music? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the 7 biggest conflicts Dolly Parton ever faced. These aren't just little arguments. These are the clashes over business, betrayal, and creative control that tested her spirit and shaped the legend we know today. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 7 is a conflict that was mostly fought with smiles and witty one-liners, but was still rooted in some real on-set friction. We're talking about the legendary actor Burt Reynolds. On screen, their chemistry in the 1982 hit The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was absolutely electric. Rumors of a real-life romance were everywhere. Dolly, with her classic humor, fanned the flames, once telling an interviewer, "I couldn't wait to jump into bed with Burt Reynolds." In the movie, not in real life. But behind the playful banter, the set was a clash of 2 very different personalities. Dolly described their dynamic as being like brother and sister, which allows for a lot of love, but also for little arguments and little spats. The main issue? Dolly is a consummate professional. She shows up ready, knows her lines, and expects discipline. Reynolds, on the other hand, was known for a looser, more improvisational style. In her autobiography, Dolly mentioned how their different approaches caused friction. She was there to make a movie. He was there to be a movie star. Even the playful insults they tossed at each other in interviews often had a little truth to them. When asked if she'd work with Burt again, Dolly once joked, that old, dreadful, unsexy thing," before adding, "Actually, he's really a wonderful person." This was a classic Dolly move, a sharp jab wrapped in a velvet glove. However, one incident went beyond jokes. During a scene where Reynolds had to lift Parton, she heard him groan under her weight. The scene took multiple takes, and with each lift, Burt's groans got louder. After the film wrapped, Reynolds needed surgery for a double hernia, something Dolly felt guilty about for years. The romance rumors also became a source of tension. After Dolly joked to the press about them both wearing wigs and high heels, Reynolds was reportedly unhappy. It wasn't the joke itself that bugged him, but he felt she was destroying the magic of their on-screen fantasy. He wanted to keep the illusion alive, while Dolly preferred to pop the bubble with her signature humor. In the end, their relationship remained one of deep, if complicated, affection. She visited him and spoke of him with genuine sadness after he passed away, clarifying they were like siblings. This friendly feud is a perfect start to our list, showing Dolly's ability to handle difficult personalities with grace, even when there was real friction behind the rhinestones. At number 6, we have a conflict born not from bad blood, but from the immense pressures of a musical supergroup, the clash between Dolly Parton and the powerhouse vocalist Linda Ronstadt. In 1987, the album Trio, featuring Dolly, Linda, and Emmylou Harris, felt like a gift from the heavens. It was a massive success, a perfect blend of 3 iconic voices. So a sequel should have been a no-brainer, right? Well, the road to Trio 2 was a decade-long saga of scheduling conflicts. creative differences, and frustrations that nearly killed the project. The tension was so real that Dolly once joked the album should have been called The Three Tempers. According to multiple accounts, the main problem was the clash between Dolly's fast-paced, business-first approach and Ronstadt's incredibly meticulous studio process. Emmylou Harris even noted how hard it was to just get in touch with Dolly, saying she has more people around her. When they finally got into the studio in 1994, their different work styles became a huge issue. Ronstadt, a known perfectionist, loved to take her time, spending hours on a single vocal take. For Dolly, who was running a massive business empire, this pace was maddening. In a moment of raw honesty, Dolly later admitted, "Ronstadt loves to work in the studio and works so slow it drives me nuts." She even confessed she wanted to say, "Wake up, B, I got stuff to do." The frustration went both ways. Ronstadt got fed up with what she saw as Dolly's unreliability, claiming Dolly would agree 2 sessions and then cancel at the last minute. Ronstadt was quoted as saying, "It was 20 grand every time we got one of these faxes. And we couldn't get her on the phone." The conflict peaked when Dolly released a live album that Ronstadt felt was scheduled too close to Trio 2's planned release, fearing it would hurt their sales. For a while, the project was dead. The fallout was severe. Dolly said she felt hurt, insulted, and burdened with guilt, stating, "They be at a fit and dumped the greatest project ever. I would have lived up to my word, but my word wasn't good enough for them." Eventually, an album was pieced together from their 1994 sessions and released in 1999. But the tension lingered. Ronstadt later expressed frustration about working with Dolly again due to the reliability issues. It's in a move that says everything about her character. Dolly later publicly apologized for her part in the conflict, admitting she was the primary problem when it came to getting it all together. This wasn't a feud fueled by hate, but by the collision of 3 powerful artists at number 5. We have a different kind of conflict, not a big public fight, but a quiet and maybe more confusing professional cold shoulder. This is the curious case of Dolly Parton and the other undisputed queen of country, Reba McEntire. Publicly, these two have always been the picture of mutual respect. Reba calls Dolly her idol, and Dolly has called Reba a dear friend. But behind the scenes, Dolly has hinted at a different story, one of feeling deliberately left out by Reba. This wasn't about a single fight. Instead, Dolly described a pattern that left her feeling like an outsider in the very community she helped build. The situation came to light when Dolly spoke about her surprise and hurt at being consistently excluded from projects celebrating the pioneering women of country music. These were tributes she rightfully expected to be part of, but her name was often missing. More pointedly, some reports have claimed, though it's never been substantiated, that Reba had requested not to share screen time with her on one occasion. Dolly didn't express this with anger, with a sense of genuine confusion and pain, emphasizing that she felt not wanted. For a woman who built her brand on warmth and inclusion, this was a deep cut. The reasons remain a mystery. Was it a misunderstanding? A quiet rivalry for the Queen of Country crown? We can only speculate. Publicly, the two have kept things cordial. Reba has gushed about Dolly's influence, and they even recorded a celebrated duet of Does He Love You in 2021. Yet, the shadow of this perceived distance lingers. Dolly, while never showing animosity, has made it clear that the feeling of being pushed aside had an impact. This is a potent reminder that some of the deepest cuts don't come from explosive arguments, but from the quiet chill of being left on. The outside looking in, it's a story of 2 queens of the same kingdom, with a mysterious and unspoken distance between their thrones. If you're enjoying this peek behind the curtain of country music, do us a favor and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the untold stories of your favorite stars. Our 4th entry isn't really a feud, but a quiet, heartbreaking business clash between 2 of music's biggest icons, Dolly Parton and the king himself, Elvis Presley. This is the story of the song that got away. The year was 1974. And Dolly had just written a deeply personal song as a farewell to her mentor, Porter Wagoner. That song was I Will Always Love You. Soon after, she got the call every songwriter dreams of Elvis had heard the song, loved it, and wanted to record it. Dolly was over the moon. She said, I was so excited. I told everybody I knew. Elvis is going to record my song. She was all set to go to the recording session, ready for one of the biggest moments of her career. But then, the day before, she got a call from Elvis's formidable manager, Colonel Tom Parker. The Colonel's message was blunt. It was standard practice for Elvis to get at least half of the publishing rights to any song he recorded suddenly. Dolly faced an impossible choice. This wasn't just about money. It was about ownership and control. She had worked tirelessly to build a career on her own terms, and her songs were her children. As she put it, I expect them to support me when I'm old. Giving away half of the rights to her most personal song felt like giving away a piece of her future. With a heavy heart, she made one of the toughest calls of her life. She told Colonel Parker no. The session was canceled. The dream was over. I cried all night long because I was so disappointed, she revealed. It wasn't Elvis. I loved Elvis, ... I know he loved this song. There was no bad blood between Dolly and Elvis. In fact, years later, Priscilla Presley told Dolly that when she and Elvis were divorcing, he sang I Will Always Love You to her on the courthouse steps. This news touched Dolly deeply, confirming the song's special place in his heart. Dolly's painful decision turned out to be one of the most brilliant business moves of her career. Nearly 2 decades later, when Whitney Houston recorded the song for The Bodyguard, Dolly retained all the publishing rights. Song's massive success earned her a fortune. With Dolly famously joking she made enough money to buy Graceland. It was a brutal lesson in the music business, but one that cemented her status as not just a brilliant artist, but a masterful businesswoman. Number 3 is a feud that dragged Dolly into the crude, totally barred world of shock jock radio. This was her public clash with Howard Stern, an attack that violated her sense of dignity. In May 2008, Howard Stern aired a segment using audio from Dolly's own audiobook. His team had spliced together words and phrases from Dolly's voice to create a vile, completely fake rant. The doctored audio made it sound like Dolly was spewing racist, profane, and sexually explicit comments about her friends and peers. For any celebrity, this would be a nightmare. But for Dolly Parton, whose entire image is built on kindness and faith, it was a profound personal attack. She was horrified. Her response was swift and uncharacteristically forceful. I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life, her public statement read. I cannot believe what Howard Stern has done to me. In a blue million years, I would never have such vulgar things come out of my mouth. She explained it was editing or some sort of trickery and apologized to her fans for them even having to hear it. The statement ended with a clear warning. If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this. This was a side of Dolly the world rarely sees. Howard Stern, in his typical fashion, was dismissive, calling the bit obviously parody and funny as hell. When told about a potential lawsuit, he snapped, "Bring it on." In the end, Dolly chose not to sue, likely to avoid a long, ugly public fight. However, she made her point. She had been publicly wronged, and she stood up for herself with strength. The story has a fascinating epilogue, though. In 2023, 15 years later, Dolly finally appeared as a guest on The Howard Stern Show. The interview was respectful, and the old conflict wasn't brought up. Her appearance felt like a quiet victory. She didn't have to go on his show, but she did in her own terms, proving that after all those years, she was the one who had the last laugh. At number 2, we have a feud that wasn't with one person, but with an entire system. Dolly Parton's career-long battle against the male-dominated Nashville establishment. The Good All Boys Club. This was a quiet war fought for creative control, respect, and the right to be more than just a girl singer. When Dolly arrived in Nashville in the 60s, country music was a man's world. Women were often expected to just sing the songs written by men and follow the career paths laid out by male executives. Dolly refused to fit the mold. From the start, she was a paradox the Nashville machine couldn't figure out. She had the look of a bombshell, but the pen of a poet, writing songs with groundbreaking emotional depth. Male executives told her the big hair and flashy outfits were tacky and that she should tone it down. Dolly ignored them, turning her unique look into an iconic brand statement that she would define herself. The conflict grew as she fought for control over her music. She wasn't content to just be a singer. She was a songwriter, producer, and businesswoman. She started her own publishing company early in her career, a move unheard of for a female artist then. That decision was the foundation of her empire, and the very reason she could say no to Elvis. This fight for control was at the heart of many of her conflicts, especially with Porter Wagoner. But it was a systemic struggle. Ken Burns' documentary Country Music highlights how women in the industry have historically been forced to fight for control. A battle Dolly was on the front lines of. This wasn't a war of public spats. It was a war of attrition, won through decades of relentless work, smart business moves, and an unshakable belief in her own worth. Every time she produced an album, started a business like Dollywood, or wrote a song that broke the mold, it was a victory. Dolly Parton didn't just succeed in the Good All Boys Club. She beat them at their own game and built her own kingdom right next door. And now for the #1 spot. The most significant, transformative, and deeply personal professional conflict of Dolly's life. This was the legendary feud with her mentor, partner, and greatest adversary, Porter Wagoner. In 1967, Porter Wagoner was a massive country star. He hired a young, unknown Dolly Parton to be his new girl singer on his syndicated TV show. The audience was initially hostile, but with Porter's help, she soon won them over. Their duets became legendary, and the partnership launched Dolly into superstardom. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. The relationship was incredibly volatile. Dolly described them as being like oil and water, saying they collided all the time because we were both very strong-willed. Porter was the boss, used to being in control. Dolly was a creative force with her own ambitions. As Dolly's solo career exploded, the tension escalated. It was Porter's show, but Dolly was becoming the main attraction, and he struggled with her. Rising star. We were just a lot alike, Dolly explained, both ambitious. The arguments grew, and Dolly later admitted to calling him a male chauvinist pig. After 7 years, Dolly knew she had to leave, but Porter wouldn't let her go. He felt he had discovered her and was entitled to a piece of her success. In a desperate attempt to make him understand, Dolly went home and wrote, "I Will Always Love You." She sang it for him the next day. He broke down in tears, called it the best song she'd ever written, and agreed to let her go if he could produce the record. But the breakup turned into a bitter war. In 1979, Wagoner sued her for $3 million, claiming breach of contract. It was a devastating blow. "That was money that I didn't have," Dolly recalled. She eventually settled out of court for a reported $1 million. For years, they were estranged. Yet, in an act of grace that defines her, Dolly reconciled with Porter years later. When Porter was dying from lung cancer in 2007, Dolly was by his side. She held his hand and they prayed together, bringing their story full circle. This feud was painful and expensive, but it was essential. The fight to break free from Porter Wagoner was Dolly Parton's declaration of independence. So, did Dolly Parton really hate these 7 figures? When you look closer, the word hate just doesn't fit. Her story isn't one of hatred, but of incredible strength, principle, and resilience. She navigated on-set friction with a Hollywood star like Burt Reynolds and creative tension with a fellow legend like Linda Ronstadt. She weathered the cold shoulder of a peer and made the tough, but brilliant business call to say no to the king of rock and roll. She faced down public humiliation from Howard Stern with dignity and waged a quiet, decades-long war against an industry that tried to box her in, and most importantly, she endured a fiery split with Porter Wagner, a conflict that didn't break her, but liberated her. What's truly remarkable isn't that she had these conflicts, but how she handled them. In almost every case, she met conflict with professionalism and eventually forgiveness. These feuds didn't tarnish her legacy. They built it. They tested her. Famous kindness and proved it was real because it was a grace forged in fire. Dolly Parton's smile isn't one of naivety. It's one of wisdom. The wisdom of a woman who has fought her battles, won her wars, and still chooses to lead with love. What do you think about these conflicts? Who do you think was in the right in the explosive Dolly versus Porter split? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of music's biggest icons. Thanks for watching!